the day. Deputy House Leader.
Government Notice of Motion number 61.
Government Notice of Motion number 61. Mr. Sousa.
Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask the House to revert to introduction of bills.
Minister of Finance.
This other page is a little bit better.
Try another thing.
Mr. Speaker, I move, seconded by Ms. Wynne, that this House approves in general the budgetary policy of the government.
Mr. Sousa has moved, seconded by Ms. Wynne, that this House approves in general the budgetary policy of the government. I would ask at this time that as the pages deliver the copies of the budget, that two things happen. Number one, that we clear the way, make sure that there's nothing in your aisles, and that we allow them enough time for them to deliver the budgets, and then we'll proceed. It's now time for the delivery of the budget. Canadian curling was exciting. I must check to see that all members have their copies. All members? Thank you. Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask the House to revert to introduction of bills. Not yet. All right, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Sorry? Don't like it? All right. I just want to get on with it. I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker, I rise to present the 2016 Ontario budget. Before I begin, please join me in welcoming my wife, Zenny, who's seated in the Speaker's Gallery. We first met in junior kindergarten in Kensington Market. Zenny, yeah, she often reminds me of those humble beginnings, which inspires me, which inspires many, to do our best so that our kids can have an even greater opportunity. Mr. Speaker, those values are shared by most Ontarians, and they're reflected in the pages of this document, Mr. Speaker.
Wow.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor of tabling the budget of Ontario for 2016.
Particular thanks to my Deputy Minister of Finance, Scott Thompson, and the Deputy Treasury Board Secretary, Ray Morenza, and your teams. My sincere gratitude goes to all the people at the Ministry of Finance and Treasury Board for a job well done. As well, Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend our great political staff and colleagues in this House for their long hours and exceptional teamwork in helping create a plan designed to grow our economy and create jobs. So thank you to everyone. Mr. Speaker, as anyone who's been through the budget process knows, it's not glamorous. But I know two things about our Ontario public servants. First, they know that serving the people of Ontario is a privilege. And second, there's nothing they would rather do. And Mr. Speaker, we expect nothing less in Ontario. Because that tremendous work ethic, that same spirit lives in homes and businesses right across our province. Ontarians not only work hard, we work smart. And we look at the challenges ahead of us and overcome them. We size up the opportunities and seize them. It's what we do. It's why our families came here, whether a century ago or decades ago, like mine, or weeks ago, like refugees fleeing Syria. people from around the world choose to live in Ontario because they know that in Ontario, what was true yesterday is still true today. There's room for everyone. Room for everyone to compete and do business, room to learn, and above all, room to help each other. And I believe no matter which side of this house we sit, we can all agree that what Ontario needs are jobs for today and jobs for tomorrow. During the last global recession, we launched a multi-year plan to protect jobs, invest in schools, hospitals, roads, and transit. A plan that manages expenses and that strengthens our economy. We did this while building an Ontario that is every bit as compassionate as it is competitive. We knew that we had to control expenses, manage spending, find savings, and make the necessary investments to move Ontario forward to protect and create more jobs. And all the while, chipping away patiently, day in and day out, at the deficit. At the same time, we also chose to keep supporting valuable services, like healthcare and education, that provides for our families and keeps us competitive. Mr. Speaker, there are other choices we could have made. Some wanted us to cut vital services drastically across the board, but that would have hurt the very services Ontarians needed most at the moment they most needed them. Instead of cutting, we built. Mr. Speaker, we kept people working and we built for the long term. We built hospitals and schools. We built roads and transit. And we built an education system second to none. Today, students from full-day kindergarten to college, university, and apprenticeships are getting ready for today's jobs and tomorrow's opportunities. All of us, as Ontarians, have been creating those opportunities together. Since 2009, our businesses and entrepreneurs have helped create more than 600,000 net new jobs. The vast majority have been full-time and high-paying jobs in the private sector. And Ontario is getting ready to create an additional 320,000 jobs over the next 36 months. Mr. Speaker, that would bring Ontario's total job creation to well over 900,000 in just 10 years. That is more jobs than there are people in the sixth largest city in all of Canada, my hometown of Mississauga. And there's more. We've created a business and investment climate that is one of the most competitive in North America. We're keeping our taxes competitive. We've cut the marginal effective tax rate on new business investment in half, and we're keeping that in place too. We've reduced the cost of doing business by cutting regulatory red tape, and we're going to do even more. When people start a business in Ontario, they know that their workers will be highly skilled and talented. Those solid advantages, Mr. Speaker, are important in an uncertain global economy. Ontario's economy is projected to grow by 2.2%, making us a leader in Canada in economic growth and job creation. For the last 2 years, we've attracted more foreign direct investment than any other Canadian province or U.S. state, creating full-time, high-paying jobs in the private sector for Ontarians. We know from experience, however, that the global economy can turn very quickly. Right now, economic winds are currently blowing in the right direction for Ontario. Low dollar, low oil prices, a steady U.S. demand all favor Ontario exports. However, we cannot simply trust that those fair economic winds will stay with us. We must keep charting our own course. So we're staying the course, moving forward with our plan that is working to build jobs for today and jobs for tomorrow. The plan is investing in infrastructure to be more competitive. It's about leading in a low-carbon economy driven by innovative, high-growth, export-oriented businesses. The plan invests in people's talents and skills and their ability to create the jobs of tomorrow. By expanding access to college and university education, the plan also helps all Ontarians achieve more. And Mr. Speaker, the plan is also about helping more Ontarians achieve a more secure retirement. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, we will keep building a more compassionate Ontario and a fair society and stick to our plan of fiscal responsibility to eliminate the deficit. Mr. Speaker, we launched full-day kindergarten in 2010. We said then that it was the best thing we could do to build a better, more competitive Ontario, because we know that giving young minds a great start in those critical early years sets them on a path to success in the years that follow. Mr. Speaker, that first full-day kindergarten class is in grade 5 this year. And with each passing year, our young people, our children, are learning new skills and gaining more confidence, getting closer to post-secondary education and the workforce. As every parent knows, kids grow up fast. One day, we're driving them everywhere by car. The next day, they're driving the car everywhere. So, it's time, Mr. Speaker, that we look ahead to what our kids will do next. We have to make sure that every child, no matter what their family income, has an opportunity to get a great start in life. Next, we'll make sure that every student, no matter what their family income, has an opportunity to get a great job. The kind of job you can only get with a post-secondary education. We know that people who have a degree or a diploma can expect to earn more than those who don't. We also know that people from low-income families don't pursue a post-secondary education as much as others, because they feel it's beyond their reach. And even though we have one of the most highest attainment rates in the world, we need to be higher to enhance Ontario's prosperity. That's why we are taking steps to make post-secondary more affordable for more students. We are transforming Ontario Student Assistant so that it becomes less complex and easier to access. All students will continue to be as well as or better off than they are under the current Ontario tuition grant. In fact, more than 50% of students from families with incomes of $83,000 or less will receive grants that are greater than the cost of average tuition. Too often, Mr. Speaker, most vulnerable in our society don't pursue higher education due to that sticker shock of admission. Mr. Speaker, for college and university students who come from families with incomes of less than $50,000, average tuition will be free. Mr. Speaker, it gives us great pleasure to announce that these students will have no provincial student debt. Students like Cormac McGee, who is in his 4th year of journalism studies at Ryerson University, and Megan Phillips, who's in her 2nd year of medical office administration at George Brown College. Both are with us today in the Speaker's Gallery. Please welcome them. Our plan will also increase access and benefits to the middle class. That means more young people will have greater education and be better prepared to find work with more opportunity to excel in attaining a higher quality of life for their families. This is an investment in their future. It's an investment in our future. Mr. Speaker, there's also another investment we proudly make. Our publicly funded, high-quality healthcare system is a great competitive advantage for Ontario. And it's also a source of comfort for our families. For the last several years, Ontario has not only controlled growth in healthcare spending, we have led the way in keeping our strong healthcare on a sustainable path. In 2016-17, we will increase funding for hospitals by $345 million, including So it will increase funding for hospitals by $345 million, including the first increase to hospital-based budgets in 5 years, which will reduce wait times even further, Mr. Speaker. At the same time, we are maintaining our commitment to increase funding to home and community care by $250 million per year for the next 2 years. Ontario is also planning to make the shingles vaccine available to eligible seniors aged 65 to 70 free of charge, Mr. Speaker. This will lower their costs by about $170 to help make their everyday lives easier, as well as help reduce emergency visits and hospital stays. This balanced approach allows Ontario to achieve greater progress and protect high-quality, valued health care. Mr. Speaker, we all have places to go and we need to travel, whether it's to an early meeting at the start of the day or to daycare at the end of the day. Like so many, I'm a daily commuter. And I think I speak for all commuters when I say we'd rather spend less time looking at the back of those stick-figure families on those car windows and more time with our own families. For sure. That's why we are committing $160 billion over 12 years to public infrastructure. That's it. That's a bigger commitment than was made in our fall statement. And it's the biggest investment of its kind in our province's history. Mr. Speaker, strategic infrastructure investments stimulate economic growth and creates jobs. Strategic infrastructure investments move people more quickly and safely. And strategic infrastructure investments moves goods to market more competitively. By moving Ontario forward, we are building GO Regional Express Rail, which will quadruple the number of trips from 1,500 to 6,000 a week. Municipalities have told us that the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund is vital to help them build infrastructure that is critical for their communities to thrive and compete. Mr. Speaker, these are smaller communities of less than 100,000 people and also in rural and northern communities.
Small towns, big dreams.
Right. So I'm pleased to share that we are increasing and expanding this fund to $300 million per year by 2018. Mr. Speaker, these are vital investments in jobs for today and for jobs of tomorrow. These are investments that keep Ontarians moving. These are investments to keep our economy growing. Furthermore, over 10 years, we will invest $11 billion to improve the conditions of our schools. And $12 billion, Mr. Speaker, in hospital capital improvement. Mr. Speaker, these record investments we are making in building roads, transit, schools, and hospitals will create jobs today and sustain jobs for tomorrow. It will strengthen our province and improves quality of life for Ontario families. Sourcing capital is also a key part of enabling these investments. As you know, in November 2015, the province completed the initial public offering of Hydro One. It created strong investor demand and was well received by the marketplace. We remain on track to generate $5.7 billion from maximizing the value of our assets and, more importantly, from reinvesting those funds into transit and other projects across Ontario to create even more valuable assets and greater returns, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, although today's global economic climate continues to be uncertain, the forecast for Ontario is stronger than in other regions. Last month, TD Bank reported that Ontario can expect solid economic growth in 2016, fueled by our strong manufacturing and exports. And we want to sustain that growth, Mr. Speaker, and build upon it. We want to lead the world with a dynamic and innovative business environment. That's why we're moving forward with the Business Growth Initiative outlined in last fall's economic statement. This will support further innovation in Ontario's economy. It will help small and medium-sized businesses scale up, helping them become global leaders. The Business Growth Initiative will help modernize the regulatory system and further reduce costs of doing business. One example is a new advanced manufacturing consortium involving 3 universities, Western in London, U of W in Waterloo, and McMaster in Hamilton. They got a little bit ahead of me there, Presidents. I'd like to highlight the presence of those 3 universities who are also with us today in the gallery. Mr. Amit Chakma of Western, Mr. Feridam Amdulapur of Waterloo, and Mr. Patrick Dean of McMaster. Thank you for your partnership. This partnership will work with businesses, manufacturers, and industrial research projects in making Ontario a leader in products like digital components and high-tech devices. Ontario will lead. We have no doubt. Mr. Speaker, the global fight against climate change presents new opportunities for Ontario's economy and jobs. We all know that climate change already costs the people of Ontario. Let's not turn our backs on them. We know that if left behind, those financial costs will only continue to rise over the coming years. And we know that while climate change creates environmental challenges, tackling those challenges also creates tremendous economic potential. I am proud that Ontario has supported innovation to become a model for sustainable growth and prosperity. Our people have shown leadership in areas like quantum research and Perimeter Institute and biosciences in Mars. We cannot and will not sit idly by and wait for others to take action. That's not the Ontario way. It sounds new age, but it's been our tradition. In fact, Mr. Speaker, many people may not know that North America's very first commercial oil well actually began in Ontario in 1858. In the village of Oil Springs in Lambton County. And now more than 150 years later, we're leading again. Ontario began transforming our carbon-based economy a decade ago when we announced North America's single largest greenhouse gas reduction initiative by closing down our coal-fired power plants. From supplying a quarter of our electricity 10 years ago to none today. I grew up next to Four Sisters Lakeview Coal Plant. In 2005, we had more than 50 smog days. Since we closed the last of Ontario's coal plants in 2014, we've had 0. None, Mr. Speaker. People breathe easier, our air is cleaner, our electricity is greener, and others around the world are looking to our leadership in clean tech. Because Ontario is home to more than a third of Canadian clean tech technology companies. All of this means jobs for today and jobs for tomorrow, giving us a competitive advantage over places where they've chosen to put off their emission reductions for another day, another smog day. Make no mistake, Mr. Speaker, our world, our global economy is headed to lowering emissions and cleaner air. There's an old saying, Mr. Speaker, we do not inherit the earth from our parents, we bore it from our children. Mr. Speaker, our people, our children are demanding that we be good stewards of the environment as well as the economy. Yes. Ontario was among the first to eliminate coal, among the first to embrace clean tech, and we will be one of the first to take the next big step in environmental sustainability, innovation, and economic growth. That is why Ontario is moving forward with the proposed cap and trade program. Under this program, Ontario will cap the amount of greenhouse gas pollution that businesses and institutions can emit. Companies could respond by investing more in clean tech to become more efficient, burn fewer fossil fuels, or buying additional carbon credits. In the meantime, Mr. Speaker, all proceeds from the cap and trade program, up to $1.9 billion annually, will be invested exclusively to prescribe programs that reduce pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. It will ensure clean air for our children and future generations to come. And as Ontario invests in growing the global low-carbon economy, we will reap the economic benefits. Ontario's clean tech companies will thrive. With our recently announced Green Investment Fund, Ontario will spur investment and innovation to help provide solutions to large emitters that face barriers in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Mr. Speaker, these dedicated programs will ensure companies and households thrive during the transition to a low-carbon economy. Cap and trade will create an even more dynamic and innovative business environment with jobs for today and jobs for tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, Ontario's plan also includes strengthening retirement security. Let's give credit where credit is due. Thanks to the vision and leadership of Premier Kathleen Wynne, the Ontario Retirement Pension Plan will help close the savings gap for millions of people who lack the security of a workplace pension. And thanks to the hard work of our colleague, Mitzi Hunter, we have been able to make the ORPP a major part of our economic plan. We believe that every working Ontarian deserves a secure retirement. So we will enroll employers in the ORPP starting next January, as planned, and only start collecting contributions in January of 2018. Payments of benefits would still commence in 2022. We are also working with the federal government and other provinces to look at ways to meet the goals of ORPP within an enhanced CPP framework. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, our plan means more Ontarians will enjoy a more secure retirement, meaning Ontarians and Ontario's economy will be stronger. Mr. Speaker, in keeping with our plan, Ontario continues to build a fair society. It not only includes retirement income security, it includes overall income security. This year's budget continues to improve the supports that lift people out of poverty. We are directly addressing the impact of changing labor market and helping our most vulnerable. And as such, we are increasing social assistance rates by 1.5% for people who receive Ontario Works and for people who rely on the Ontario Disability Support.
1.5%, right on.
And Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to announce that we will also join with researchers and select communities to develop a basic income pilot project.
Woo!
And we're investing $178 million over the next 3 years in our long-term affordable housing strategy to support the goal to end chronic homelessness.
Right on.
We're investing in affordable housing because everyone deserves a roof over their head. And we're undertaking new progressive initiatives such as anti-racism and anti-violence because it's never okay. We support a long-term strategy to end violence against Indigenous women because everyone deserves to be safe. And taking action on the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, it will improve social conditions and economic opportunities for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. listened to Ontarians, Mr. Speaker, and it's important to note that this budget is a product of many open and extensive consultations with tens of thousands of people across our great province. Some may laugh at that, Mr. Speaker, but our interactive Budget Talks platform empowered people to submit and vote and comment on real time, Mr. Speaker. The leader of the NDP may not appreciate that, but there is one individual such as Lyle Skidmore who submitted an idea to put LED lighting on provincial highways. He too joins us today in the Speaker's gallery. Where are you, Skid? There you are. Thank you. His is but one of many ideas that are contained in this plan. My colleagues on the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs tell me that at every single one of their hearings, they heard from family groups and community groups and health organizations about what we need to do to help our most frail and elderly live with dignity, and about the need to improve palliative care as well as end-of-life care. So in this budget, we're going to expand hospice care. Mr. Speaker, a lot of this work has been spearheaded by one of the most compassionate Ontarians I know. Someone whose own personal experiences with his father's end-of-life care have inspired him to help others. Thank you, MVP John Sousa. Mr. Speaker, a compassionate Ontario also means making everyday life easier for Ontario families. We've taken steps to help auto insurance rates go down, not up, and we will eliminate the $30 fee for drive clean. All right, Mr. Speaker, we're eliminating the debt retirement charge, and we're offering energy retrofits. And we're lowering hospital parking fees, Mr. Speaker. Support to full-day kindergarten helps families manage their time and costs while giving our children a better start in life. And Mr. Speaker, we're offering more support for children with autism to help families receive IVI care more quickly and more frequently. Education is being expanded with access to online learning through eCampus Ontario. And, Mr. Speaker, we're also using technology to make it easier to use public services. By 2018, people will be able to use an online service to renew their health cards, as an example. Let's not forget, Mr. Speaker, that we've also increased the choice and convenience by expanding the distribution of beer to grocery stores. And now we're expanding more choice of wine and cider on those shelves. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, for years we have called on the federal government to be a willing and productive partner in building a strong Ontario.
Because Ontario remains at the heart of our Canadian economy. Et nous avons toujours fait notre part.
We have always done our part to ensure our province and our country stay strong.
It's also encouraging, Mr. Speaker, that Canada's new government in Ottawa and our new Prime Minister have shown interest and willingness to work with us to build Ontario's economy. And we look forward to continuing to strengthen that partnership. Alors que le Canada fêtera.
And as Canada celebrates 150 years our province will host events.
Mr. Speaker, we are celebrating our 150th anniversary, the roots of our great country, and the heritage that makes us who we are. Nous allons explorer.
We will explore our history and celebrate local talent.
We'll explore our history and also experience the diversity of our Indigenous and Francophone communities. And our many, many cultural communities as well, Mr. Speaker, and that makes Ontario great. As I said earlier, Ontario's plan has been long in the making. We continue to chip away at the deficit. Now, we're in the home stretch. Through hard work and discipline, Ontario remains the province. Through hard work and discipline, and no thanks to the members opposite, Ontario remains the province with the lowest per capita program spending in Canada, Mr. Speaker. Our net debt to GDP ratio, a key measure of fiscal performance, is expected to peak at 39.6% in 2015-16, then level off. It will improve in 2017-18 and track towards our goal of 27%. Our plan represents a balance between making strategic investments and managing expenses. The results reflect the hard work of Deputy Premier Deb Matthews and our Treasury Board team as we continually examine how every dollar is spent line by line to focus on improving outcomes that support key public services relied on by families and to ensure maximum value for taxpayers on government programs and services. This has helped improve Ontario's performance and the fiscal plan. All right, I gotta take a drink. Mr. Speaker.
Shut up.
Mr. Speaker,
Let him
our
speak.
plan is working. Our plan is working. We are now projecting a deficit of $5.7 billion in 2015-16, reduced further to $4.3 billion in 16-17. And Mr. Speaker,
Better than Fidelity Financial.
and Mr. Speaker, this will be the last deficit before we erase it completely in 17-18. We are balancing the budget. Mr. Speaker, Ontario has a lot to be proud of. Our natural environment, our quality of life, our great cities, our countryside. We grow and produce some of the world's greatest food. We brew great beer and make amazing wine. Our high-tech and clean-tech industries are leading the way for the rest of the world. Our banks are some of the world's strongest and most reliable institutions. For hundreds of years, the products mined and made and farmed in Ontario,
Barb is right.
the discoveries uncovered here have been done more than just bring us wealth and prosperity.
Yes.
They've improved the lives of millions of people around the world. We have much to be proud of. And most of all, our single greatest resource, the best edge we have in a globally competitive economy, has always been and will always be our people.
Yeah.
So our government remains committed, above all, to our people, to ensure each of us has what we need to do to compete and win. And more than that, we have what it takes to build a bright future. Bright people who create jobs today and jobs tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
The opposition House Leader and member from Simcoe Grade.
Mr. Speaker, I move adjournment of the debate.
Mr. Wilson has moved adjournment of the Grade. Do we agree? Carried. Minister of Finance.
Get this right, Mr. Speaker. I would ask the House to revert to introduction of bills.
So ordered. Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I move that leave be given to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Implement Budget Measures and to Enact and Amend Various Acts, and that it now be read for the first time. I would be pleased to give it to Charlotte. Thank you.
Minister of Finance moves that leave be given to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Implement Budget Measures and to Enact and Amend Various Acts, and that it now be read for the first time. It is the pleasure of the House. The motion carried. Carried.
This is a bill entitled An Act to Implement Budget Measures and to Enact or Amend Various Statutes. First reading of the bill, Premier Lecture, projet de loi.
For a short statement.
What am I saying?
That you made your statement. You're not going to make a separate statement.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move adjournment of the House.
The Deputy House Leader has moved adjournment of the House. Do we agree? Carried. This House stands recessed until Monday, 10:30. 10:30.
This is about as good as it gets.